Hello, I'm Sheikah X, and thank you for tuning into my channel. Sheikah is an acronym that stands for Communicating Holiness and Kind Affirmation with the Torah, and the X is for anything that is wrong or not based on the Bible or biblical principles. So this is part 3 of Can Women Teach, and I just want to say something before I get started into what I'm going to be talking about. And that is, I'm trying to understand, why is it that every time a woman speaks in terms of uplifting other women, we are being called feminist? If you want to call me a feminist, that's fine, but I do not see myself as a feminist. I see myself as a truth seeker, and I am trying to live my life according to what the Torah says. And I simply do not see anything in the Torah that says that a woman cannot teach. Paul is not saying that a woman cannot teach. Paul is obviously dealing with a unique situation where he is talking about women usurping authority using violent means in order to take over a man's position. Clearly that is wrong if you're using violence. So when we say that women are feminist, first of all, Elohim never created us, humans, whether male or female, to dominate over each other. He never created Adam to dominate Eve. She was a helper to him. So when we say that men are supposed to have authority over the woman, that is not true, because from the very beginning, before sin entered into this world, he told Adam and Eve to have dominion over the earth, the animals. He did not tell them to rule over each other. So you cannot use Genesis 3:16 to try to prove this point, because it's not true. So when we look at the scriptures, if Elohim created me and you want to call me a feminist simply because I'm speaking in favor of women teaching, then you need to take that up with Yeshua, because it says that both male and female were created in his image. And since we both were created in his image, then that means that the ultimate feminist must be Yeshua. So take that up with him. So the thing is, I'm tired of these misogynistic men who are sitting up here with their homosexual ministries where the men do the teaching, the men do the preaching, the men are doing everything. And meanwhile, the women are supposed to be at home baking pies for their husbands. And they're using mental gymnastics to try to prove something that the scriptures are not really saying. So when we talk about can women teach, the Torah does not forbid women from teaching. If the Torah forbids women from teaching, give me the exact book that is found, the chapter and the verse to let me know. When Paul is talking as a man, Paul makes it clear. When he says in 1 Timothy 2:12, I suffer not a woman to teach, why does he have to say I if it's found in the Torah? If it were found in the Torah, it seems like he would simply just say the Torah that Moshe gave says that women can't teach. But he didn't say that. He said I. And the way that he said I makes me believe that it is him talking. So even if Paul did forbid women from teaching, even though he didn't, he still is not the Torah. How can I stress enough that Paul is not, his letters and his epistles are not the commandments? So we can clearly see when Paul is talking about the Torah versus him speaking as a man. And just to illustrate this point, let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 9, and then I'll get into the subject that I wanted to cover. So let's look at that. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 9, it says, Paul writes, say I these things as a man, or says not the Torah the same also? For it is written in the Torah of Moshe, you shall not muzzle the mouth of the ox that treads out the grain. Does Elohim take care for oxen? Now, that is him bringing out that this is found in the Torah. He says, say I these things as a man, or says not the Torah the same also? He says the Torah. And he said the Torah of Moshe. And where can we find that again in the Torah? Read Deuteronomy 25:4. And it says, you shall not muzzle the ox when he treads out the grain. Meaning do not put anything over the mouth. Meaning do not put anything over the mouth to stop the ox from eating, because that's where he's getting his energy from. But he refers back to the Torah. So when he says in 1 Timothy 2:12, does he ever refer to the Torah? When he says, I suffer not a woman to teach, where is the Torah in that? Because we can see in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 9, he clearly says that the Torah is saying that. So where is the scripture exactly, without playing any mental gymnastics and trying to stretch scriptures to say, well, Uzziah carried the ark and he shouldn't have done that, which has nothing to do with it. That was a whole different scenario. We're saying, well, in Genesis 3:16, the man is supposed to rule over the woman. That is not a law. Those were simply curses. And I'm going to deal with Genesis 3:16, but I'm not going to talk about that today. But where is it in the law? I don't need mental gymnastics to try to explain something that is not there. When Paul is using personal pronouns, which I covered in part 1, he is speaking as a man. He is not speaking from the Torah. When we have scriptures where Paul is referring back to the Torah, it is obvious. He says it. So if 1 Timothy 2:12 was him speaking from the Torah, why doesn't he say, instead of saying, I suffer not a woman to teach, why doesn't he say the Torah forbids women from teaching? So it's not there, and if it is, show me where it is, and don't play mental gymnastics by talking about the New Testament is related to a man's testicles and women can't preach because they're on their cycles. I don't want to hear any of that. That is not speaking against it. So I just want to clear it up that when Paul is speaking as a man, it is clear because he uses personal pronouns. He makes distinctions between when he's talking as a man and when he is not. Now, if you did not get a chance, I'm just going to give you a brief review of what I said in part 2, where I dealt with in the Greek, there were actually 2 words in the Greek that were used for authority, and that was authenteo, and that was only used one time, and that was in 1 Timothy 2:12, which uses violence in order to obtain a position. And I also spoke of exousia, which is used 103 times, which does not use violence, but it is talking about authority, as we would normally look at authority, not relating to violence. So now I'm going to deal with the fact that Paul is not against women teaching. Because if Paul is against women teaching, either he's contradicting himself or he is speaking about a unique circumstance that he was not forbidding all women from teaching, but he was only saying that at this particular, with this kind of problem, if women are usurping the authority of a man and creating violent acts in order to get into that position, he is speaking against that. But we can clearly see that Paul is not contradicting himself. Paul actually commends women for teaching. I actually heard someone say, he went on like almost a 4-hour rant saying that women are feminists and women can't teach. And he was trying to say that there were no female deacons. That is a lie. There were female deacons, and I'm going to get into that. But first, I wanted to just show you at least one illustration. There are going to be more, but this is just going to be a brief video because this is not complicated. There are instances where Paul sends out a female deacon, and there are also instances where he is praising the females for teaching Timothy. And those females were his mother and grandmother, Lois and Eunice. They taught Timothy. Now, this man actually was saying that, I've heard some people say that a woman cannot teach the Torah, and she cannot teach the Torah. Not only can she not teach the Torah to women, but she cannot teach the Torah to men. That, my friend, is a lie. Because if Timothy was taught by his mother and grandmother, there is no New Testament. So if there is no New Testament, Lois and Eunice could only be teaching him from the Torah because there was no New Testament. So if there's no New Testament, then that is obvious that Eunice and Lois had to teach from the Torah. And if you're saying, I've heard this man, he went on almost a 4-hour rant saying he's trying to equate the testicles of a man to the 2 New Testaments, and it's really only one testament. It's really only one. So, that is irrelevant, but I'll deal with that in another video. But anyway, so let's look at the fact that he does praise female teachers. Paul praises female teachers. So if he is against it, I shouldn't find any examples of him saying that women can teach, right? Oh, but we do. So let's look at that scripture where he's actually praising women for teaching Timothy. So, okay, let's read the key text again. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. Now, let's go and read a text where we can see that he was not against women teaching. Now, when we read 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5, it says, when I called, this is Paul writing to Timothy, he says, when I call to remembrance the unfeigned faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded that in you also. And Paul continues in 2 Timothy 3, verses 14 and 15. He said, but continue in the things which you have learned and have been assured of, knowing of whom you have learned them, and that from a child you have known the holy scriptures, which are able to make you wise unto Yeshua through the faith which is in Yahushua HaMashiach. Now here we can see that Paul is commending Lois, who is the grandmother of Timothy, and Eunice, who is the mother of Timothy. So if Paul is so against women teaching the Torah, what else do you think that Paul is commending them for except for teaching the Torah? Because they clearly are part of the New Testament, so the New Testament didn't even exist. So what do you think his mother and grandmother were teaching Timothy? They obviously were teaching him the Torah. That's common sense. Now, there was also an issue where this man went on to say that there are no such things as there's no such thing as a female deacon. That, my friend, is a lie. There are female deacons. So if there are no female deacons, we shouldn't find any examples of any female deacons, should we? Oh, but we do. We find examples of female deacons. So let's look at it. Where are there female deacons in the Bible? Now, when we have, let's look at Paul sends out a female deacon to send his epistle or his letter to the Romans. Okay, so let's look at Romans chapter 16, verses 1 and 2. I commend unto you Phoebe, our sister, which is a servant of the called out assembly, which is at Cenchrea. Now, before I read any further, let's look at the word servant here. The word servant in the Greek, the word servant traces back to the word diakonos. And diakonos is the Greek word that we would say deacon. Now, this is also a masculine and a feminine noun. So a deacon can be both a servant and minister. And so Phoebe or Phoebe was a female deacon, and Paul sent his letter to the Romans through a woman. Okay, so let's read further. So now that we know that there are female deacons, the servant means deacon. Now, the roles may be a little bit different than what we see as a deacon in these days, but she is still a woman who is being referred to as a deacon, because this word servant goes back to the Greek, which is diakonos, and that is either a masculine or feminine noun, so sometimes deacon or deaconess. Now let's read on. Okay, so it says, I commend unto you Phoebe, our sister, which is a servant of the called out assembly, which is at Cenchrea, that ye receive her in Yahuwah, as does become the Kodashim, or that is the saints, and that ye assist her in whatsoever business she has need of you. So if Paul is against women being in authority over a man, why is he saying to assist her? Whatever business that Phoebe has or Phoebe has, assist her. If she is asking for assistance, that means that Paul is granting her authority. And if women are supposed to be at home baking pies for their husbands and staying to the home, why is he sending a female deacon to deliver his letter, his epistles, to the Romans? And he says to have respect for her, that she comes in Yahuwah. Have respect for her. So he's trying to say, have the same respect that you would have for her as a man. So if he is so against women and women are supposed to stay home, he wouldn't be giving Phoebe an epistle to deliver. That would be contradictory. And to say to have to assist her in whatever she needs, no. Now also let's read further in Romans chapter 16 verses 1 and 2. It says that ye receive her in Yahuwah, as does become the Kodashim, and that ye assist her in whatsoever business she has need of you, for she has been a helper of many, and of myself also. So Paul is saying that Phoebe or Phoebe was not only a helper of many, but Paul is saying that she has helped him as well. So either Paul is contradicting himself or he is not. And I do not believe he is contradicting himself. Paul is simply saying that if a woman is not doing things in the right way, she cannot teach. And like I said before, it did not seem to be an issue. He never addressed this being a problem, but clearly Paul was not against women being an authority for the fact that he sent a female deacon to deliver his letter to the Romans. Okay, so the thing is, I'm going to do a part 4, and that will be coming up next because I'm still dealing with 1 Timothy 2:12. So I just want to say that, it's not about being a feminist. It's not about me taking up necessarily for women. I am just against lies. And I'm seeing so many people who call themselves Bible believers who are lying about women being able to teach when the scripture is not there. I need the book, the chapter, and the verse. If you cannot produce that, like I said, I don't need your mental gymnastics where you're trying to stretch things out to say stuff that it's not saying, to promote your little homosexual ministries where men do everything, men do the preaching. I don't need that. Show me the exact scripture, just like I showed you in 1 Corinthians 9:9. There was an exact scripture where he is referring back to the Torah. So if he is forbidding women, if the Torah is forbidding women, just give me the simple text where it says that. So with that being said, these videos are going to be very short because it's not complicated at all, but it's just the simple things that look like people just don't understand. So anyway, I'm going to end this video. There will be a part 4, and I would like to thank those who have subscribed to my channel. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I would appreciate that. And I just want you to stay in the word as I am. And the issue is not so much feminism. The issue is, are we going by the Torah? Are we going by the Torah? If we are going by the Torah, it's not necessarily that I'm a feminist. It's that I'm just standing up for truth. And if it were men that were being attacked with error, I would defend that as well. So Yeshua said that he created both the male and the female. And all I'm saying is that males and females need to work side by side. And for someone to sit up here and say that women can't teach because the woman does not carry the seed, that myself, I'm going to deal with that in a later video. But right now, I'm not done analyzing 1 Timothy 2:12. So I'm just going to end it here. And I just hope that you have a wonderful week, and shalom.